The three spine-chilling true horror stories that reveal sinister secrets and unexplainable terror within. Emily's heart raced as she stepped into her house, feeling the weight of dread pressing down on her. The picturesque suburban landscape of Willow Creek seemed like a facade, hiding a world of terror. Just last week she had returned home to her kids, whispering about a new friend that only they could see. What sort of innocent joys were lurking behind those cheerful smiles? As she settled into her exhausting routine of shifts at the diner and bedtime stories, horror began to weave its way into her daily life. Bones rattled with every creak of the house as she gazed at her children, Annie and Jake, giggling together on the living room floor. The shadows stretched and twirled under the flickering lights, whispering secrets only they could understand. They had always been imaginative, but tonight something about their laughter sent shivers rippling through her spine. They exchanged glances, eyes wide, and suddenly the room felt too alive. An unnatural chill crept across her skin, and she instinctively shut the bathroom door, trying to shake the absurdity of her fears. "It's just late," she told herself. "Stress from work." But doubts gnawed at her. Why were they so eager to introduce her to this mysterious friend? It felt wrong, an echo of the recent whispers about families vanishing in Willow Creek. Once a peaceful enclave, it was now shrouded in mystery and fear. Each time Emily passed Mr. Henderson, her seemingly jolly neighbor, an unsettling feeling gnawed at her heart. How could a smile hide such darkness? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The next night, after coming home from her shift, the front door stood slightly ajar, a bone-chilling sight that instinctively threw her off balance. Holding her breath, she crept inside, the air thick with an eerie silence. "Annie? Jake?" Her voice trembled, swallowed by the empty darkness. Every creak of the floorboards beneath her felt like a warning bell ringing in her ears. The alertness of fear began as her eyes scanned the room, picking out shadows that twisted into nightmarish shapes. Her pulse quickened when she spotted a crudely written note on the counter. "We won't play alone anymore." It was written in a childlike scrawl, but the implication sent terrifying chills racing down her spine. Anxiety took root in her gut. Had her children truly found a friend, or something much more sinister? She fought the panic rising in her chest, but knew she couldn't stand by idly. The news of those abductions weighed heavily on her mind, each story a reminder that safety was an illusion. With Mr. Henderson's image taunting her behind closed eyelids, her instincts shouted danger louder than ever. Every smile he'd given, every charm he'd woven, were now facades hiding a darkness she couldn't fully grasp. With resolve hardening into desperation, she set out to uncover the truth hidden beneath the painted smiles of Willow Creek. But time was running out, and the dread that filled the corners of her home whispered of horrors yet to unfold. She felt it, a lurking menace waiting to claim its next victim. Would it be her family, or would she emerge from the shadows ready to confront whatever nightmare lay ahead? Emily could barely catch her breath as she stood frozen in the doorway. Each heartbeat echoed in her ears, drowning out the silence of her home. She glanced around the dimly lit room, her mind racing with worst-case scenarios. The laughter that had once filled her home now felt like a taunt. The note lay on the counter, as unsettling as the shadows that danced along the walls. "We won't play alone anymore." Who had written it? Was it really her children, or had something more sinister slipped into their lives? A feeling of desperation gnawed at her. "Annie? Jake?" Her voice came out weak, barely a whisper, as if speaking too loud would summon whatever lay hidden in the dark. As she moved deeper into the house, the floorboards creaked underfoot, each sound amplifying her anxiety. She left the note untouched, the words seeping into her mind like ink spreading on paper. Momentarily she closed her eyes, envisioning the faces of her children, calm and innocent. But what if their innocence had been overtaken by something malevolent? The lurking dread was palpable. Emily's instincts screamed at her to grab her kids and flee, but she couldn't. They needed her to find out what was going on. As she moved to the living room, the laughter erupted again, but it was twisted, dark. An echo that felt almost mocking. "Mommy!" Annie's voice perked up from the shadows. Emily whipped around, her heart stammering. There, in front of the flickering television, her daughter sat cross-legged on the floor, staring intently at something just beyond the reach of the light. Jake was beside her, but his grin was unnaturally wide, so out of place in that moment. "What are you doing?" Emily asked, unnerved by their expressions. "Playing with our friend," Jake chirped, his eyes gleaming with an unnerving light. "What friend?" Panic gripped her. Annie turned to Emily, her small face impossibly serious. "The one you can't see. But he's really nice. His name is—" Before she could finish, the lights flickered violently, plunging the room into near darkness. Emily's stomach dropped. She dashed toward the light switch, flicking it up and down, but none of her efforts worked. The room sank into shadows, and the atmosphere thickened around her like fog, choking her with fear. "Stop it!" she shouted, desperation slipping into anger. "You need to stop this game!" Suddenly she heard a sound that made her blood run cold. A soft, raspy voice whispered from the corner of the room, "Mommy, do you want to play too?" Emily's heart plunged. She whirled toward the corner but saw only darkness. The flickering light cast nightmarish shapes that twisted and turned, warping in ways that felt sickeningly alive. She could feel another presence inching closer, an invisible weight pressing down on her. "No," Emily breathed, trembling. In that moment her worst fears came crashing down. Whatever had invaded her home was in her children's hearts, whispering secrets and weaving fear. As she backed away, she couldn't shake the feeling that the presence was more than mere shadows. It was feeding off the innocence of her kids. She thought of Mr. Henderson, with that unsettling charm that felt more like a mask than a smile. "Annie! Jake! We're leaving!" She grabbed their hands, pulling them up, but the kids remained fixed, giggling and pointing into the darkness. "Come play with us!" Jake urged. Emily felt the air around her thickening, pressing in, suffocating. A cold sweat trickled down her back. "No! We need to go now!" But as she turned to make a break for the door, it swung shut with a deafening bang. The laughter returned, layered with something darker, an echo of the uninvited terror that hung over Willow Creek like a storm cloud, ready to unleash its fury. Emily's pulse raced. The house groaned, the shadows writhed, and she realized this was not just a game or a friend. It was a hunt, and she was the prey. What had she awakened, and how could she save her children from the depths of madness that danced just out of reach? Would she be able to fight back, or was it already too late? Emily felt the coolness of the shadows seep into her skin as she stood paralyzed, her children's laughter echoing hollowly in the darkness. The door slammed, shaking the very foundation of her home. "They can't see it," she thought, terror wrapping around her throat like a vice. "They can't." She fought against the urge to scream. Instead, she pulled the kids as hard as she could. "We need to go. We need to get out." But they were immovable, their eyes glazed and focused on the flickering shadows as if under a spell. "Mommy, he wants to play," Annie said, her voice dripping with a childlike glee that made Emily want to scream. "He's really nice. Look." Emily's heart hammered as she stared into the darkness where Annie pointed. The shadows shifted, pooling together like liquid night. Shapes moved, undulating in a sickening rhythm. "Let's go!" she yelled, a note of desperation creeping into her voice. She yanked at Jake's arm, but he didn't budge. His smile twisted unnaturally wide as he giggled manically, his laughter ringing out like a death knell. "Mommy, don't you want to see him?" he squeaked. Panic surged through Emily. "No! Whatever it is, we're not staying here!" She sensed the darkness growing, alive and hungry. A low growl emanated from the corner, the sound almost tangible. "Stay and play." The cords of Emily's sanity stretched to the breaking point. Her need to protect her children flared bright, burning through her fear, pushing her forward. "Listen to me," she shouted, desperate. "We need to leave right now." Suddenly a cacophony of whispers erupted around her, drowning out her words. "Mommy, stay, play." They were voices tangled in the shadows, a chorus of pleading and mockery. The floor creaked ominously beneath her, as if the house itself was breathing, shifting, enclosing her. "Annie, Jake," she cried, her voice breaking, her heart racing, longing for a shred of their awareness. She shook them gently, her hands trembling. Was there any glimpse of her children left? The heat of the moment gripped her entire being. At last, Jake turned to face her, his expression momentarily flickering with recognition. "Mommy?" "Yes, sweetheart, it's me. Come on." But just as quickly the shine faded from his eyes. "But we're playing," he insisted, his gaze drawn back to where the shadows thickened. The darkness pulsed like a heartbeat, begging, inviting. "No!" Emily screamed, forcing every ounce of strength she had into her voice. "We are leaving, now!" With a surge of determination, she wrapped her arms around them both and pulled, yanking them toward the door. As if the house resisted, the air thickened around them, a viscous barrier pushing back like a predator toying with its prey. But she couldn't stop. There was no going back. "Let's go!" she roared as she surged toward the door, willing it to give. The handle twisted violently. To her horror, the door remained bound. She slammed her body against it, throwing all her weight into the impossibility of escape. The whispers crescendoed into laughter, an overwhelming symphony of delight. It wrapped around her, suffocating and clinging like a poisonous cloud. "Come play with us forever." The voices coaxed, a sweet, deadly tune that promised everything and nothing. With a final push, the door burst open. The light flooded in, harsh and blinding. Emily stumbled back, holding her children close. For a heartbeat, reality spun free. "Out!" she yelled, dragging them into the light with every bit of strength left in her. The laughter faded into the inky blackness behind them, but the whisper lingered, coiled around her mind. Not forever. When Emily turned around, the door slammed shut behind them with a slam that echoed through the night. It was then she realized that whatever had touched her children wasn't gone. It was waiting for the moment when they would dare to return. And for the first time she understood they were not safe, not even outside. What if the hunt had only just begun? The night air was thick, charged with an electric tension that made Emily's skin crawl. She stood on the porch, fear constricting her throat like a noose. The house loomed behind her, dark and silent, a predator waiting patiently for its chance to strike. Her heart pounded loudly in her ears, drowning out even the whispers of the wind. "Mommy?" Annie's voice was small, fragile against the oppressive weight of the moment. Emily turned to her daughter, who looked back with wide, innocent eyes. It felt wrong. The light that had illuminated Annie just moments before was dimming. She could sense it, like a candle snuffed out, leaving only the chilling darkness behind. "Let's go to the car," Emily said, her voice trembling. She could feel the shadows creeping closer, curling at her feet like hungry snakes, trying to pull her back inside. "We need to get as far away from here as possible." "But what about him?" Jake asked, his smile fading. The innocence he wore so effortlessly was draining away, replaced by a frown that sent chills rippling through Emily's spine. She felt a fleeting sense of loss, as if she was watching a part of him disappear. "We don't need to worry about him," she snapped, shaking off the dread that threatened to consume her. "He's not real, just a trick." But even as she spoke, her heart sank with doubt. Nothing about the night felt real. The shadows behind her, the bitterness in the air, all twisted like nightmares spilling into her reality. She grabbed their hands, squeezing tightly, ready to run. As they sped toward the driveway, something caught her eye, a flicker of movement near the edge of the woods. The darkness seemed to ripple, forming and reforming into a shape. It was then she saw it, a figure, hunched and grotesque, lurking just beyond the tree line, watching them with eyes that gleamed like polished obsidian. A paralyzing chill crept over her skin. "Hurry," she urged, pushing the kids forward. Time felt elastic but oppressive, stretching with each second that passed as they reached the old car parked on the gravel. The engine churned reluctantly before roaring to life. Relief surged through Emily, but it felt fragile, like a bubble that could burst at any second. She slammed the gear into reverse and twisted to look behind them, only to freeze. The figure had moved closer, a grotesque smile splitting its face, or were they jaws? It was impossible to tell. Its limbs twisted unnaturally as it crept forward, shadows pouring from it like smoke. The whispers began again, more insistent this time, wrapping around her mind like tendrils of fog. "Mommy, why doesn't he come with us?" Jake asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. The innocent question pierced through Emily like a dagger. The implication behind it made her skin crawl. "He's just playing," Annie chimed in, her voice eerily chipper amidst the terror. Emily's heart sank. Were they already lost? "Shut up, both of you!" she screamed, slapping hands over her ears as the whispers grew louder, more sinister. "That's not your friend. He wants to hurt us." With a jolt, she slammed the car into drive and punched the gas, gravel and dirt flying up behind them. But it felt too easy to flee. The sense of security faded fast, and a sick certainty gnawed at her gut. They were being led away, the darkness dancing and swirling behind as if mocking her desperate escape. Then came the sound. A sharp crack echoed from the woods, snapping like dry twigs beneath the weight of something immense. Emily glanced in the rearview mirror, searching for the source. A chill rolled down her spine. The creature was gone, vanished back into the shadows, but she knew better than to think they were free. "Look out!" Annie screamed, just as Emily turned to the front. A flash of movement crossed the road. A deer? No, it was something larger, something with an unnatural gait. As it darted into view, Emily swerved instinctively, the car jerking violently, tires screeching on the gravel. A loud thump reverberated through the vehicle as she felt a jolt pass through them. She turned around in horror, expecting the worst. Hearts pounding, breath catching. What were they to do now? "Is it gone?" Jake whimpered. Emily's stomach twisted, and she shook her head in denial. It didn't matter. They had to keep moving. But the feeling of dread enveloped her like a blanket, smothering her resolve. She shifted her focus to the road ahead, praying that they wouldn't stop until they reached the edge of the town. All at once, a flicker of light broke the tangled shadows beyond the forest. A house, a sanctuary. Maybe there were more people. Maybe someone could help. But as Emily drove closer, her heart sank. The lights flickered erratically, as if they were beckoning, a relic in the midst of the sprawling abyss. When she pulled up, doubt gnawed at her. Was it an invitation or a trap? As she sat there breathless, a cold realization washed over her. The hunt wasn't over. It was only just beginning. What awaited inside that house? Emily's hands trembled as she gripped the steering wheel, the tires crunching over gravel as if echoing her fear. Light flashed in the rearview mirror, illuminating her children's anxious faces. Their eyes were wide, scanning the outside for any sign of the figure. She focused ahead, heart racing, mind spinning. The darkness felt so heavy, pressing against the car like a weight, threatening to suck her inside. "Mommy, it's really dark out there," Annie whispered, her tone both fearful and curious. "I know," Emily replied, forcing a calm she didn't feel. "But we're safe in here." But as seconds stretched into eternity, the shadows of the trees crouched closer, feeling like they might reach out and grab them. The flickering lights of the house loomed closer now, revealing peeling paint and broken shutters, a cruel parody of safety. "Are you sure we should go in?" Jake asked, voice trembling. His innocence shattered by the horrors they had faced. He clutched his sister's hand tightly. "Yes!" Emily snapped, her patience slipping. "We need help. There might be someone inside." She shut the engine off, and the world descended into a deafening silence. The car felt hollow, the once comforting hum gone. The weight of the air pressed in around them, stifling. A chill swept through the vehicle, sending shivers down their spines. "Let's go now," Emily urged, unbuckling her seatbelt. She stepped out into the cool night, breathing in the eeriness. The light from the house illuminated paths of warped wood and weeds. She glanced back at her kids, their faces pale under the weak glow. "We'll be quick." Hand in hand, they approached the door. Shadows flickered inside, no solid form but flickering, shifting like living things. Emily knocked, tentatively, the hollow sound echoing into the silence. Heart pounding like a drum, she feared the dark could answer her plea. "Mommy, what if no one is home?" Annie asked, the usual innocence in her voice sounding unnervingly adult. "We'll figure it out," Emily replied, though uncertainty gnawed at her resolve. The air felt heavy, charged with whispers that drifted from the trees. They curled around her like icy fingers, trying to invade her mind. Before she could knock again, the door creaked open slowly. A faint figure appeared in the doorway, silhouetted against the dim light inside. The figure was a woman, though the shadows obscured her features. "Help! Help us!" Emily gasped, desperation slipping from her lips. The woman's voice came soft and slow. "You shouldn't be here." Emily's heartbeat thundered in her ears as the woman stepped aside, allowing them into the house. It felt wrong, like stepping into a predator's lair. They crossed the threshold, and the door slammed shut behind them with a finality that paralyzed her. Dust hung in the air like a curtain, and the room was filled with old furniture draped in white sheets, as if the house had been frozen in time. Pictures hung crookedly on the walls, and a chill settled deep in her bones. It was unsettling, almost alive. Every corner felt like it had eyes watching them. "What?" Jake began, but the words caught in his throat. The woman turned, her eyes wide and haunting, peering at the children like a wolf assessing its prey. "They're coming," she murmured, almost to herself. "You must leave before they arrive." "What does she mean, Mommy?" Annie whispered, clutching her closer. Emily's mind raced. The darkness outside, the figure, they weren't safe at all. "We need to find a way out," she urged, adrenaline propelling her thoughts. Just then, a loud thump echoed from somewhere deep in the house, reverberating through the walls like a heartbeat. The woman's expression shifted, flickering with fear. "No, they're already here." Panic surged, along with a looming shadow creeping closer to the faint light. Emily grabbed her children, eyes wide with horror. What was about to happen? The lights flickered out. "Mommy, I can't see!" Jake cried, trembling. Emily's breath quickened. "Stay close," she shouted, desperately feeling for the door. But before she could reach it, an icy cold wrapped around her ankles, pulling her back. Then came the whispers, more insistent, more furious. They clawed at her mind, echoes of fear flooding her thoughts. Why had she come here? "That's not your friend!" she screamed again, but it only deepened the darkness around them. What had they stumbled into, and were they ever going to escape? As Emily's heart raced, the shadows danced in delight, whispering familiar secrets of nightmares. A sudden realization crashed over her. The door wasn't just behind them. It was everywhere. Were they the prey in someone else's hunting ground? The movement behind the shadows shifted, and in a cruel twist of fate, something emerged from the gloom, its intentions dark and deadly. What would happen now? The air crackled with an unseen energy, the silence thickening until it felt tangible. Emily could taste terror on her tongue, bitter and metallic. The shadows swirled like smoke, and she clutched her children tighter, her mind racing to find a way out. "Mommy, what is happening?" Annie's voice trembled, barely more than a whisper, as fear seeped into her small frame. I don't know, sweetie," Emily breathed, her heart hammering painfully in her chest. Each second ticked by as if stretching into eternity, the darkness pulsing alive around her. Then she heard it, a steady beat like drums echoing from the depths of the house, a slow rhythm that sent chills crawling across her skin. It felt like a countdown. "Stay close," Emily urged, her voice steady despite the terror threatening to consume her. She could barely see, but instinctively she began to pull Jake and Annie toward the sound, hoping it was a way out. Each step was hesitant, the floorboards creaking under their weight like a warning. "Mommy!" Jake squeaked, his small hand shaking in hers. "I'm scared!" The shadows shifted closer, a dark mass curling around the corners of the room, as if sensing their fear. The woman stood forgotten, her eyes darting around, searching. "You have to go! They'll take you too!" Emily's stomach dropped. "Take us?" Before the woman could respond, a low growl echoed in the darkness. It was a guttural sound, primal and angry, unlike anything she had ever heard. The hairs on her neck stood on end. Something was hunting them. "What do we do?" Jake cried, his eyes wide as he stumbled backward. The air grew colder, wrapping around them like icy fingers, pulling them further into the gloom. Emily yanked him back, her heart racing. She wanted to scream, to run, but the shadows felt alive. Their whispers clawed at her mind. "Don't listen!" she shouted, fighting against the encroaching dread. But it was too late. The shadows began to solidify, forming into shapes, distorted and grotesque. Figures with long limbs and hollow eyes emerged, their movements jerky and unearthly. "We need to run!" Emily screamed, her voice breaking. She turned, dragging her children toward the door. But before they could reach it, the loud bang of the floor echoed through the darkness, blocking their escape. They were trapped. "No, no!" she gasped, spinning to face the encroaching figures. Beady eyes glinted in the dim light, filling her with a primal terror. The woman fell silent, her features fading into the murky dark as if she had never been there at all. "What do you want?" Emily shouted, desperation spilling into her voice. But the figures only advanced, their jagged shadows clawing at the air, hungry for something she could not comprehend. Then she saw it. Something glinted in the darkness, a light flickering like a beacon. "There!" she cried, pointing toward it. The movement caught her breath. As the figures closed in, the light shifted, illuminating a path through the nightmare. "Run!" she commanded, shoving her children ahead of her. They dashed toward the light, terror fueling their flight as the wails and whispers chased them. With every step, the shadows writhed, their grasping forms growing closer, reaching out like the arms of the damned. Emily felt the breath of fear on her neck, hot and heavy, pulsing with malevolence. Just as they reached the threshold of the light, a hand shot out from the darkness, clawing at Emily's ankle. She stumbled, the world blurring as despair threatened to pull her under. "Mommy!" Jake's scream cut through the chaos. "No!" Emily cried, wrenching free from the grip, adrenaline surging. "Keep going! Don't look back!" They surged forward, the light enveloping them as she fought against the shadows pulling her down. But as they reached the edge, a horrified thought struck her. What if it wasn't the end? What if once they crossed over, they weren't truly safe? The light flickered, and for a brief moment she felt a dull ache in her heart, a bond that might be severed, an ultimatum hanging in the balance. As she stepped into the light, Emily screamed into the darkness, "You won't take my children!" But the shadows shrieked back, the echoes of their laughter ringing relentlessly in her ears. And just like that, everything went black. What awaited them beyond the light? Would they escape, or become part of the darkness forever? The darkness vanished with a snap, and Emily found herself standing in a blinding light, disoriented and gasping for air. Her heart was pounding, still resonating with the dying echoes of fear. She blinked rapidly, trying to make sense of her surroundings. "Mommy?" Jake's voice was tentative, pulling her back from the void. They were in a different room, still part of the old house, but the dim shadows had retreated, leaving behind an empty, silent space. Pale walls stared back at them, and dust motes danced lazily in the beams of light streaming through the cracked windows. But it felt wrong. "Where are we?" Annie whimpered, glancing around, her small frame trembling. "I don't know," Emily whispered, her stomach knotting at the absence of any threat, but still sensing it lingering, like a fugitive just out of sight. The room was cluttered with forgotten furniture, antique chairs, and a table piled with dusty books. Each item seemed to hold its breath, frozen in time. Emily could feel the air shifting, a weight pushing against her chest, and her instincts screamed vigilance. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the adjoining room, a sound so sudden, so jarring that Emily's heart lurched. "What was that?" Jake squealed, eyes wide. "Stay close," she commanded, clutching her children to her. The light appeared safe, but she sensed the staleness of danger gripping her once more. "Mommy?" Annie's small hand squeezed Emily's, and in that moment Emily wished she could assure her that everything was all right. But a sharp instinct reminded her of the shadows they had escaped. Carefully, Emily led them toward the sound, stepping through a threshold that filled her with unease. They entered the next room, and the sight made her blood run cold. A cracked mirror hung on the wall. Its surface was warped, reflecting not just their images, but twisted visages behind them, faces of anguish, horror, and fear, eyes hollow and impossibly wide. "No, no!" Emily shouted, pulling the children back. But the reflection moved almost independently, mouths moving in a silent scream. "Mommy!" Jake whimpered, the fear palpable in his voice. And then she heard it again, that drumming rhythm pounding in her head, reverberating through the walls, growing louder, like a battle cry of something ancient, primal. The shadows they had escaped were not far. They were merging into the corners of the room, creeping back, reaching out like lulling hands, ready to pull them under again. "Run!" Emily shouted, her voice raw with panic, spurring them into action. They sprinted back towards the corridor, the pulse of a malicious heartbeat echoing behind them. They fled through a doorway, an unfamiliar hallway lined with portraits, but these painted figures seemed to watch, their eyes gleaming with a knowing malice. Each step echoed too loudly, almost taunting. Just as they reached the end of the hall, the drumming stopped. Emily hesitated, a chill sweeping through her. This quiet had weight. It felt like a breath, holding in anticipation. "Where do we go, Mommy?" Annie breathed, fear piercing Emily's heart, need clashing against the encroaching dread. Then the air shifted again, and a door swung open at the far end. A shadowy silhouette framed the entrance, inviting and threatening all at once. It was a dark figure. The very essence of their fears materialized, the presence of the darkness they thought they had escaped. Emily's breath hitched, thoughts scrambling. That figure in the doorway seemed to beckon them, yet it dripped with a promise of despair. Terrified, she glanced back at her children. Jake's small fingers trembled in hers. What choice could she make? Every instinct told her to flee, yet the terrifying call of the unknown drew her in like a moth to flame. "Stay close," she urged, gripping their hands tighter. But with every step toward that dark figure, the shadows lurked closer, the promise of the past whispering in her ear, and just as they were about to turn back, a chilling promise slithered through the air. "You can't escape. You've only just begun to understand." The voice was sweet like honey, but dripped with malice. Emily turned to run, but her feet betrayed her. A force pulled her forward, towards that figure, leaving her breathless and uncertain. What would happen if she stepped into the darkness again? Was it truly the end, or had it only just begun? The shadows coiled around Emily like living tendrils, thick and suffocating. She could barely breathe, panic clawing at her throat. The dark figure awaited just beyond the doorway, its form twisting and shifting as if made of smoke and regret. "Mommy!" Jake cried, pulling back hard. "Don't go in there!" Emily's resolve quaked. It was the darkness, the very thing that had haunted them, whispered to them, damned them, but she couldn't let fear dictate their fate. "We need to find a way out. We have to—" Before she could finish, the figure spoke again, voice dark and silky. "You think you can leave? You are bound to this place now." The words slithered around her, wrapping tighter. She took a trembling step backward, inching away from the threshold, but her feet felt glued to the old wooden floor. "Mommy!" Annie looked up at her with the wide-eyed innocence of a child, unaware of the horrors surrounding them. There was nothing innocent about the darkness that loomed before them. Emily fought to shake free, forcing herself to grasp her children tighter. "Run!" she finally screamed, shattering the stillness. At that moment, the walls seemed to pulse with energy, responding to her fear. They lunged back down the corridor, feet pounding against the floor. But it wasn't the way they had come. The hallway twisted as if the house itself had decided to thwart their escape. Gazes from the portraits shifted, their painted eyes full of glee at the chaos as they sprinted past. "Mommy, I can't see!" Jake's voice was panic-stricken. The air felt electric, charged with something malevolent. "The light!" Emily yelled, spotting a flicker at the end of the hall. It was dim, but a beacon in the all-consuming dark. "Keep going!" Every step was a leap of faith, yet the shadows slithered closer, whispering empty regrets and dreadful memories. The drumming in her head returned, now thundering as if 1,000 hearts beat as one. It pushed forward with a terrible urgency that quickened her pace, urging her to move faster, to break free from this grasping nightmare. As they neared the flicker, the light flared brightly and then extinguished into darkness once more. Emily gasped, panic twisting in her gut. "No, no!" She fumbled blindly, searching for any hint of safety. A sudden pressure gripped her arm. It was Annie, tears shimmering in her eyes. "Mommy, what's happening?" And then, from the dark, something whispered, a chilling breeze brushing past her ear. "You cannot hide. I will find you." The voice wrapped around her, each syllable brimmed with a slow, intoxicating threat. She wanted to scream, but terror held her captive. With newfound determination, Emily grasped Jake's hand tightly in one and Annie's in the other. "We're going to find a way out. We're not staying here." They bolted towards the only remaining possibility, a door at the far end of the corridor. The pressure in the air thickened as they ran, shadows swooping down like vultures. Just as they reached for the handle, it swung open violently, revealing darkness thick enough to swallow light whole. Emily hesitated, dread rippling through her. The figure stood at the threshold, eyes like burning coals, its mouth a gaping void. "But where would you go?" It taunted, a smirk creeping across the shadows of its face. "The darkness seeks you. You are never free." Just then the floor beneath them trembled, causing all three to lose their balance. With a scream, Emily and the children tumbled forward, breaking through the threshold into utter blackness. Time seemed to freeze. Emily felt the world spin around her, reality blurring as darkness enveloped them completely. They were falling into a suffocating void far worse than the house's confines. Then they hit the ground, hard. The impact knocked the breath from her lungs, and disoriented, she struggled to pull herself upright. As Emily fought to catch her breath, she heard whispers, low and haunting, circling around them like a chaotic storm. "You're in our world now." What waited in this new dim realm? Would they find freedom, or had they stepped into the ultimate trap? A looming question hung in the air. What would it take to break free from the darkness? Survival or surrender? Emily blinked against the oppressive darkness, her heart racing like a wild drum in her chest. She strained to see, to grasp any shape, but everything around her was engulfed in swirling black. The hushed whispers heightened her anxiety, each soft sound sliding under her skin, igniting a primal fear. Then her fingertips brushed against something cold and clammy. She jerked her hand back, recoiling in horror. "Mommy?" Jake called, his voice quivering. "I'm here," she forced out, voice barely above a whisper. She reached out again, gripping his hand firmly. Annie stood close, though Emily couldn't see her. "Stay close. Don't let go." A damp chill seeped through the air, sending shivers down her spine. The whispers coalesced, forming words that danced just out of reach. "You belong to us. You can never leave." Never leave. The echo resonated in her mind, biting deeper. Panic clawed at her throat, constricting her ability to think. She had to act. They needed to find light. They needed safety. "Move with me," she whispered urgently, pulling her children along, trying to quell the screams of despair swelling within her. The ground shifted beneath their feet as they walked. It felt slick and uneven, like trying to find solid footing in a nightmare. Suddenly, Emily spotlighted a faint glow off in the distance, barely visible through the heaviness of the gloom. "Look! Over there!" she pointed, her voice gaining a thread of hope. They stumbled toward the light, but the shadows seemed to thrash wildly, reaching out to hinder their progress. The voices swirled around them, rising in a cacophony of laughter, evoking the memories of fear etched into her very being. "You think hope can save you?" one of the whispers mocked. "Fools!" Emily gritted her teeth. She wouldn't let this place win. "We're getting out," she insisted. Clinging tightly to her children, she propelled them forward, swallowing down the growing dread gnawing at her resolve. As they neared the light, the ground trembled again, harder this time, and the light flickered ominously, casting an eerie glow that bent the reality around them. Emily could see an opening, like a door framed by white splinters, shining brightly against the dark void. "It's right there, just a bit more." But just as they made to reach it, a howling wind swept through, knocking them back. Emily felt herself falling, grasping at air as tendrils of shadow reached for her. A guttural howl followed them, crawling through her very soul. "You cannot escape my grip. You sealed your fate." The shadow engulfed them again, dragging them deeper into the realm of nightmares. Emily felt the heat of despair wrap around her like a heavy shroud. Just when she thought all was lost, a single word burst forth from her lips. "No!" The word seemed almost to choke the shadows, and for one moment time spun to a halt. In that instant the air changed. The whispers stuttered, faltering, and Emily felt an energy washing over her, igniting her fear into anger. "We will not be yours!" she screamed, feeling strength surging through her limbs, a spark of rebellion igniting against the suffocating dark. Suddenly, light brightened again, swirling around them, brilliant and blinding. They stood at the threshold of the doorway, and as they moved toward it, the dark figure appeared once more. "You will regret this!" it spat, twisting in rage. "Together!" Emily yelled. "Hold on!" They leapt through the threshold, throwing themselves into the brilliant light that shimmered like a beacon of hope. But as they crossed over, a feeling of dread washed over them, for the light flickered and dimmed. What lay on the other side? Freedom? Or a different kind of darkness that awaited them? They tumbled into a room where shadows still lingered, but something was different. A shape loomed at the far wall, and the whispers grew louder still. "You cannot hide. We will find you." As Emily's heart raced, she took a step back, glancing at her children. "What have we walked into?" The walls closed in on them, the laughter echoing hauntingly. Just then, a door behind them slammed shut, sealing the hope they had chased. What horrors awaited them in this new realm? Would they ever escape, or was this darkness their new prison? The darkness thinned, revealing a room that felt both familiar and sinister. Emily stood frozen, eyes wide, as her heart thundered with dread. This place reeked of memories. Deep scratches on the floor, the scent of something forgotten, hung heavy in the air. "Where are we?" Jake whispered, his voice small and shaky. Annie grasped her brother's arm, her innocent eyes scanning their surroundings, searching for reassurance. "It's going to be okay," Emily lied, forcing a smile despite the fear coiling in her gut. They were together, and that was what mattered. But the shadows still lingered, dark tendrils curling around the edges of her mind. She could feel them tugging, whispering, beckoning her back into their arms. As she stepped further into the room, shapes began to form in the corners, familiar silhouettes flickering in and out of focus, whispering outside her hearing. "Mommy!" Annie shrieked, pointing to the far wall. The figures emerged clearer, pale faces, eyes like wide black holes. They were the shadows of those lost, echoes of families that had vanished from Willow Creek. "We can't stay here!" Emily shouted, the urgency cutting through the shadows' laughter. "We need a way out!" But as if responding to her cries, the laughter intensified, growing into a chorus of mocking amusement. The figures danced around the room, their movements jerky, twisted like marionettes on frayed strings. They reached out, fingers stretching long and crooked, trying to grasp at her children. Emily felt a rush of panic. "We need to go now!" She spun on her heel, pulling the kids with her as she stumbled back toward the door, but it was gone. The walls twisted and shimmered, closing in on them, an impenetrable barrier formed from the very dark that haunted her. "No!" she screamed, heart racing, gasping for air. Was this the end? Would they forever remain victims caught in this house of horrors? Behind her, the figures advanced, their dark laughter piercing through her resolve. "You cannot escape! You are ours!" they taunted, filling the air with thick, suffocating dread. Emily spun around, eyes wild, determination awakening within her as she recalled the energy from before, the light that had surged through her. "We won't be yours!" she roared, her voice breaking through the laughter. "We are stronger together!" Annie and Jake clung to her tightly. She could feel their fear coursing through her, but it stoked the fire in her heart. She closed her eyes, focusing on that deep, burning need to protect them. Surrounding them, she imagined a shield, one built from love, strength, and fierce determination. "Together!" she shouted, feeling warmth radiating from her children. They may be surrounded by shadows, but they were still a family. The air crackled, vibrating with unseen power. The shadows shrieked, recoiling momentarily. The figures faltered, uncertainty rippling through them. Using every ounce of belief she had, Emily shouted, "We refuse to be afraid!" Bright light exploded around them, an incandescent blast that pushed back the shadows, slicing through their grip like knives. In a swirl of energy, the darkness started to dissolve, and the ghostly figures hissed and faded away. The echoes of their laughter transformed into screams of anger and betrayal, vanishing like mist in the wind. As the light enveloped them, Emily shielded her eyes, heart racing as hope surged through her. "Come on!" she urged, pulling Jake and Annie closer, their laughter mingling with her own tears of relief. "We can do this!" As they surged through the remaining dark, she felt them break free, stepping into an open space filled with brilliant light. The heaviness lifted, and the warmth wrapped around them, washing away the fear. Emily gasped, breathless but resolute. They had emerged into what looked like a sunny park, vibrant and alive. Children played, laughter echoed around them. For a moment, she could hardly believe it. Had they truly escaped? But as she gazed around, a realization hit her. "We're not just free," she whispered, glancing at her kids. "We've been given a choice." Behind her, the house loomed tall but silent. The darkness locked away, smothered. The serene world beckoned, promising hope, laughter, innocence untainted. "We did it, Mommy!" Annie exclaimed, gleefully running toward a cluster of children at the swings. Her heart melted at the sight of her children finally free. Emily allowed herself to breathe in the warm embrace of normalcy, the shadows receding into nothingness. But a chill brushed against her back as she turned. The house was gone, but so was the darkness, waiting, lurking, somewhere on the edge of their reality. As she watched Annie and Jake play, joy and terror danced within her, knowing well that the shadows could come back when they least expected. Sometimes the hunt doesn't end, it just waits. Emily's heart stilled. She would always remain vigilant, her fierce love a protective barrier. They had clawed their way back, and together they would always fight. With the rising sun casting soft glimmers of hope, she smiled, holding them tightly. "We're safe now," she whispered to her children. Yet the shadows hung at the corners of her mind. The battle might be won, but the war against fear would always rage on. You need to subscribe now. Don't miss another exclusive story that could soon be yours. Smash that like button now to help fuel the algorithm. And flood the comment section with your thoughts and theories about Emily's fate. Instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to support this channel. Only true fans understand how much these actions mean to us. Let's keep the stories coming.